So for our new theme, I've come to this part of the museum where there are all sorts of displays on the theme of fashion. And I've set up here, I'm going to do a bit of a drawing just to get started with some charcoal and chalk. And they have a couple of catwalks set up, although I'm already slightly worried that catwalk as a theme might be a bit political. I'm not sure that I'm quite equipped to deal with those potential associations. But anyway, there's some great displays here. And what I'll be encouraging people to do on Monday morning, those who come to the museum, is produce a series of drawings and see what associations start to appear in your mind. Obviously, as I've said, there's the kind of catwalk associations of the fashion industry, but there's also a lot to do with historical fashion. I've taken photographs which I'm sending out to everyone, and they also include images of fashions from around the world. So fashion could also, I think, mean costume, and there is of course the whole business of making costume, making garments. That certainly interests me. My daughter is currently doing theatre costume in Glasgow, and I think I might develop some images based on the makers. And when we have a model in the studio next week, I think as well as being some kind of fashion model at one point, I think I'll get our model also to perhaps do some work on making clothes. And I suppose that would also include not just garments, but hats and shoes and things, and there's plenty of those here as well. I'll be drawing some of them in a minute. But this is just getting started. I'm on grey paper with charcoal and chalk, and because of this interesting lighting that they seem to use on the catwalk, we've got all this light from below, so I think it's quite good actually to work in charcoal and chalk and see what that does with this sort of low lighting or light coming from below. Got music playing, so it's all very much the drama of the catwalk. So that's one possibility. So I've also been introducing people to another medium. This is an oil bar, a transparent oil bar, and it can be used as a medium to mix with pencil, charcoal, pastel. And the way it works for me is to cover the page, and the page actually is a piece of card rather than paper, because the card's a bit less absorbent. The oil bar will sit on the surface, you can't see it because it's transparent, and then I draw into it with a soft pencil, or here I've got a graphite stick. And because of the fluid, oily nature of this oil bar, I think it's called other things as well, but it's basically a stick. It comes from the manufacture of oil paint. So oil paint is pigment mixed with a medium, linseed oil and other things. And these are sticks of just the medium, so there's no colour in them. And drawing with a graphite stick, which is nice and soft, or a pencil, I can mix it with the oil bar. And if you see now, I've drawn some lines. Now I'm going to smudge them a bit and move it all around. And because the oil bar is this oily fluid medium, I can smudge pencil, I can build up more oil bar, and I can even change that drawing a bit. It's quite good to use plenty so that you've got an oily surface, and you can gradually build up a drawing which gets stronger. The mixture of the oil bar and the pencil or the graphite also gets stronger, gets darker, and because I've to a certain extent protected the page by putting the oil bar on first, I can also scratch into it and take things off. I'm using a fingernail, but I've also provided people with a palette knife or some other kind of implement. And because the oil bar is transparent, the drawing itself has a translucency. So I thought that would be quite nice for this subject, some sort of historical woman's, girl's garment. And so I'm just going through a process of gradually strengthening the drawing. But also, there's an older historical feature to this garment. There's also a very kind of delicate quality as well, and that's what I would like to bring out in my drawing. And I also, bring this to the museum because we're a little bit restricted in the materials that we're allowed to use at the museum. Pastels and watercolours and things are no longer allowed. They quite like you to use pencils, but pencil on its own can be a little bit boring, I think. So to be able to give pencil this fluidity, this mobility, and also to be able to build up a stronger drawing and go through a process of adding and subtracting, I think that and a result that has some depth because of the transparency, I think is worthwhile. And now next to that dress is again something historical, a bit more you're not going to see it because of the reflections. Actually, maybe I'll try this one. So I should have paused while I find my new place. I just thought it would be good to try something dark. So lots of oil bar down, and then maybe rather than lines I should get something of a basic shape, so I can do a kind of tonal start like this. So I'm just finding my way a little bit here. I have no idea where any of this is going to lead. I have mentioned about costume makers, which I'm interested in. But the other thing that occurs to me, just seeing these garments in their cabinets, they are almost conceptual works of art in themselves. Without people in these costumes, it's quite it's quite evocative. They're evoking obviously different periods of history, different people, but because there aren't people there, there's also something quite moving about the empty garment. So that might be something that could be explored. This is, drawing and painting projects, but you might find, I don't know, you've got a particular sort of conceptual idea you want to bring out of your drawings and paintings. It doesn't have to be, as I say, the kind of politics of the fashion industry. So that's another example. I just wanted to show you the oil bar, but producing something that's very dark. And you can see you can build up this material until the pencil or the graphite stick almost becomes, like an ink. There's some pretty baffling examples of footwear here. But I know there are those who are interested in shoes and boots and things. I must show you Wayne Thiebaud, who did a lot of very beautiful paintings, really on the theme of this kind of retail, really. Beautiful displays of shoes, among other things. Shoes and ice creams are the things that I can recall. But it'll be interesting for you, those of you particularly come to the museum, but those who also find their own reference material, to start with, perhaps start with objects, artifacts, and see if they have associations, if they lead you to want to look for something from your model, or look for other information which can create a kind of context. So yes, we'll be looking at individual items and seeing what drawing them inspires. And then another avenue to explore might be the whole business of pattern, texture, motif, and as painters and people who draw, we might want to be collecting all sorts of interesting and varied patterns and textures. We might want a pencil that worked as well. A pencil doesn't work. So there is obviously a whole industry of textile design, which begins with drawing, sometimes drawing from nature, depending on what your inspiration is. And I didn't bring any colour today, but I think that's great, my finger's very dirty. I think on Monday I will bring some coloured pencils to the museum as well, and it may be that you find a way into the theme for you is something to do with pattern and textiles. There's perhaps an opening for a collage artist as well to work with fabrics and see what they generate. And of course you might want to also look at fashion in other cultures. So there are other parts of the museum with displays on other parts of the world. And there might be things there you want to explore. So both at the museum and also in your own research, you might be looking at fashion, costume from other cultures.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm talking to my students. Okay. And I can picture Doreen heading straight to Africa for some of her inspiration. So I've attached photographs to the email, and some of you will be at the museum, and I'm hoping that you can, it's a very broad theme, and I'm hoping that that gives you lots of opportunities to work with, I suppose, clothing, with costume, perhaps with performance, with cultural ideas, as well as working with the figure if you'd like to. And we'll have a model the following week in the studio, and we'll explore some of the ideas with the figure as well. So see you tomorrow.